Today we're doing one of my favorite stews. This is a tomato and beef stew from South Africa. If I can try to pronounce it properly, it is Tamatiebredie. So first off, heat some oil in a pan, which is basically the start of most recipes. Add in one thinly sliced large onion. You want to saute that until soft. After that, we will dredge some beef chunks in flour and brown those. So let's just let this do its thing, and we'll be back as soon as we have this softened. Alright, our onions are soft and just starting to take on some color. So we're going to remove them from the pan. Turn the heat up a little bit because we want to brown the meat. And we have the burner a little bit too low for that. So, turning the burner up just a notch. And I'm going to add a little more oil. And as I said, my favorite oil is avocado oil, but you could use safflower oil, any vegetable oil, peanut oil. Although that's expensive, so I'd reserve that for your Chinese cooking, which is where it does the best. Now I have just over a pound of chunked beef, and we are going to dredge that in flour. See the nice chunks. The more flour that's coating the beef, the better, because it will thicken the sauce later. Okay, I think a minute to warm up. Adding the beef to the pan. And we're just going to let it brown. Give it a flip over here and there, just so all sides, or as many sides as we can, get browned. And you want the beef in chunks that are large enough to end up a good mouthful. If you cut them too small, like that was tiny, like that's way too small, they're just going to disintegrate into the sauce, which is alright if you have enough bigger chunks. And you want to do it in batches so you don't overcrowd your pan, because if you overcrowd the pan, it's just going to end up stewing and not browning. Okay, well, it doesn't have to be perfectly browned on all sides, but once it's brown, you can pull it out and add it to your reserved onions. Now obviously there's a lot of flour there, so it's going to absorb the oil. You can add more oil as needed, but you don't want to be deep frying anything. We're going to add some more and keep on going. Alright, now that everything's been browned to my satisfaction, I am going to put in what we pulled out before to make room for the onions and all the meat. Go back in, mush it around. Well, try not to mush, but give it a stir to mix it up. Then we're going to add a jar of canned tomatoes. Now, if you don't can your own, obviously, buy a can of tomatoes. Now, the whole point of this stew is not to add water unless you fear it's going to burn. If you think that it's not moist enough to make it through, peel and cut up another tomato. A nice, ripe, fine tomato if you've got one. Anyway, so the next step, some teaspoon of sugar, teaspoon of salt, teaspoon of white pepper, more or less depending on your taste. I'm going to use a little less, I think. huge fan of pepper to start with. White pepper is better, but still. And a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Now mix that all in. Keep an eye on it, because if it doesn't look like it has enough moisture, you are going to want to add that other tomato. And now, although it looks fairly thick, it does look like it has plenty of moisture. Oh, and the one thing I forgot to mention is, when you finished with your last batch of meat, if there's a lot of oil in there, pour off everything but a tablespoon. You don't want a lot of oil. And yeah, you can see in the bottom there where there is enough moisture that it should be fine. So I'm not going to worry about the other tomato right now. Might add it later if I have to. And you really should peel the tomato, which is easy to do. You just dunk it in a bowl of boiling water for about 30 seconds, and then the peel slides right off. And then you can chunk it in there. Okay, now it's starting to bubble, so I'm going to turn the temperature down to fairly low. I'm going down to 1.4 on this stove, which is a very low temperature. And I'm going to cover, or partially cover. You want to leave a bit open. You can see that. I just generally leave it cracked like that, so that steam can escape, so it's not going to build up moisture terribly. And now we watch it. Well, like they say, a watched pot doesn't boil. But yeah, do make sure that it's down to a low simmer. So do keep an eye on it for a bit. And then once it's happy to your satisfaction of bubbling, not too vigorously, you can wander away and do whatever and let it cook. Minimum time for this should be about 25 minutes to half an hour. I leave mine to cook for an hour or two. As long as it doesn't go dry, you're fine. Use a peeler, but be very careful that you don't get the white part. You don't want that. You just want the lovely yellow lemon zest. And you don't need a whole lot of it. I think the recipe says half a lemon worth. Best there. Rest aside. Get the pits out of there. And then you want some parsley. Now, I have flat leaf parsley out of my garden. Talking about a herb here. So just give it a good chop. And then you get a little bowl and mix them together. And this you're going to use to top the I'll learn how to say it eventually. Tomato stew. Let's put it that way. Tamatiebredie. I think that's as close as I'm ever going to get. So we'll see you when it's closer to being done, because we still have to add the garlic and get it all served up. All right, we've been cooking for approximately an hour, possibly hour and a half. We did put the lid on fully to prevent it from drying out. So we'll take the lid off now and give it a check, see how we're doing. Still a lot of liquid in there, but it is looking wonderful. Look at the color and the thickness. So at this point, we're going to add the chopped garlic, or minced garlic. So that's 3 garlic cloves minced, all in there. And give it a bit of a stir in. Now, not cooking the garlic the whole time with the sauce does make a difference to the flavor. And this is traditionally how you do it for this dish. And it does actually make it really, really delicious. So, while we wait for the potatoes to finish cooking, as I said on the recipe, it traditionally is served with rice, but I love it with mashed potatoes. And we're going to have a delicious dinner. So this is dinner. Tamatiebredie with some mashed potatoes and green beans. And I'm going to serve it with a lovely red wine. I hope you enjoyed the video. Drop a like, comment, subscribe. I would love to hear from you, and I will be back with you soon with another dish. Enjoy.